I was just reflecting on what would have disqualified me for whistleblower status with the Office of Special Counsel. But at the time that I was disqualified, I actually wasn't eligible for disqualification based on what I'm looking at right now. April 4th, 2019, it's 2 years after the murder of my grandfather, which also correlated with the obstruction of my ability to attend a hearing connected to an illegal detention where I was trying to report on fraud. Former administrator of two Houston home health companies sentenced to prison in $20 million Medicare fraud scheme. You know, just about every woman I was in that shelter with that I was trying to report for fraud was being reprogrammed to be an in-home healthcare provider. Nice, isn't it? Nobody took my reports on fraud about how they were stripping down all the women, forcing the women to put their children on psychotropic medication, using them in outlays connected to testing of directed energy weapons, as well as ascribing them as assets for a number of companies, including gas and oil companies and other companies connected to the gas and oil sector. Nobody thought that was fraudulent. Nobody responded to any of my reports of fraud at all, including how it was that I was prevented after an illegal detention under the auspices of healthcare treatment from being released in time to make my hearing the challenge to hold, and my grandfather died on April 4th of 2017. And 2 years later, to the day, the Department of Justice gives a $20 million kickback for Houston regarding home health care with a name that sounds surprisingly African. I'm absolutely fucking serious. You know what that means? They absolutely know why I was disqualified for being a whistleblower, because I know what their healthcare scheme is. When I worked at the compliance department for the Department of Public Health in San Francisco in the autumn of 2013, my job was to go through the exclusions database for Medicare. I had to look up every single physician, provider, and practitioner eligible to bill Medicare in the city and county of San Francisco Public Health Network. Every month I had to do this. And one of the three databases I had to cross-reference with was the exclusions database for the Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General. And one day I was considering what would be something that would exclude somebody on this database. So I went through and I looked at everything. I looked at that point, I believe, 2 years worth of fraud bust for Medicare. And I even remarked to my supervisor. I even said it out loud enough so that the person who was working with me could hear me. This doesn't make any sense. Is this racial profiling? At least half of the names of people that were banned and made an example of originated in the former Soviet Union. And we were talking mostly about people that weren't even identified as being from the United States. And it was split in this way. It was obviously some form of racial profiling. It was that obvious to me. And I said, it doesn't make any sense. Why do they have so many people being busted for Medicare fraud, usually involving a durable medical device or some form of mobility assistance device, some apparatus that they are billing Medicare to obtain under fraudulent pretenses using the identity of somebody else on Medicare and then exporting it back to the countries from which they came? The other thing that was ironic to me and alarming was that not only was there a disproportionate representation of people who were either Russian or Ukrainian or I believe of Georgian descent, but there were all of these people who were from Africa. All of these practitioners of health or people engaged in healthcare fraud from Africa. I don't recall seeing, and I said this, I don't recall seeing one name that identified that person as coming from the United States. It was all foreign. It was all some other country, mostly Russia and mostly some countries of Eastern Africa. Why? Why during the time frame when they were making the changes to the ICD-10 coding for diagnostic assessments, and they were changing the billing procedures related to bundling through Medicare, why were the majority of people busted for Medicare fraud Russian or Ukrainian? Was it just that bad? Was there nobody from the United States at that period of time involved in Medicare fraud? It was all a racket from the former Soviet Union that they were doing what? Were they using Africa as a relay? You mean like how these police pension schemes use Nigeria in their matrix and have been for years, and how the FBI and the Department of Justice and the SEC and the members of the Congress and the Senate all refuse to respond to a report over and over and over again. The hits to the pension accounts and the hits on terrorist attacks in Nigeria are that correlated. It has nothing to do with this notice here, where you allow for my grandfather to get off as delivery on a terminal hedge set up through the Texas Supreme Court while I'm trying to report Medicare fraud. And then 2 years to the anniversary, you give a $20 million kickback. See, the last time I saw the $20 million kickback connected to reports of Medicare specifically associated with my efforts was for another named reference that wasn't African, wasn't it? But that one would be how you set this up, because that one went through someone from where? Right? The same situation going on. You just do that thing where you do the twist on the demographics. But it's not even predictive. It's premeditated. So rather than addressing the fact that I was kidnapped and trafficked for years, you set up another false claim about some recovery connected to a Medicare fraud scheme. That is literally a kickback on murdering my grandfather. Congratulations. Congratulations. Hey, you know what? He's out there. He's clapping too.